Jack Thunder and the Fragments of Anima. Book 4. Earth. Chapter 6. A Wonderful, Awful Idea. Shadow-Paws couldn't even yelp. Strombolio pulled him into the bushes so fast that he didn't have time. "Not so loud! They can hear you!" "Who can hear us?" Shadow-Paws asked. "The Wendigos. They're in this here grove right now." "Wendigos? Where have you been seeing Wendigos?" Shadow-Paws hissed, now frantic. "Not just me. Son and Frosty, too. Son told me about how they saw something the first night Yggdrasil put them up. I knew right then and there that those demons had followed them here. I brought the circus up here to see how I could help." So that's where Strombolio had been all this time. But what about the Heartwood? Strombolio's expression shifted to one of solemnity. "You heard of Sour Apple? Supposedly went missing around here?" Shadow-Paws nodded. There was no way he could have not known. Poor Sweet Apple was worried sick. "Well, I found him. He's not well. I tried to get him into my trailer so I could give him some medicine, but he ran away before I could snag him. He's still somewhere in this grove. You still got Lethal Joke with you?" It's in Yggdrasil's chamber," Shadow-Paws stammered. Strombolio sighed in relief. "Okay, so it's safe. It's getting late, so I want you and the others to bring the fragments with you the next time you go out. I have a feeling you're gonna need them." I will. Thank you, sir. I'll go back to my trailer and see what I can do to help. Good luck, Shadow-Paws." Shadow-Paws raced back towards Yggdrasil. He had to tell Jack Thunder. It was the Grove's only hope. Shadow-Paws bolted inside Yggdrasil's trunk and came to a rough stop, panting. Hey! What's up, Shadow-Paws? You look like you've been running from the ghost of solstice yet to come," Jack Thunder joked. Shadow-Paws caught his breath. "I know what happened to Sour Apple." At the mention of Sour Apple, Jack Thunder, Buckthorn, and Snotter stopped what they were doing and turned to face Shadow-Paws. Even Frosty and Son halted. "What happened? Did you see him?" Snotter almost shouted. Shadow-Paws relayed to them what Strombolio had told him. "The Wendigos broke into the grove?" Snotter couldn't believe what she was hearing. "That's what Strombolio thinks. Sour Apple was probably how they got in," Shadow-Paws confirmed. "Now that you mention it," Frosty added, "Son and I saw something strange the first night we came here. It was almost like a Wendigo tried to attack us but couldn't. We kind of assumed that the Heartwood would be enough to fend them off." Shadow-Paws nodded. "Strombolio told me. He wants all of us to take the fragments of Anima with us when we go out tomorrow morning. He says we'll need them." Jack Thunder nodded. From the sound of it, they would definitely need the fragments to rescue Sour Apple. But they needed a plan, too. The room was silent as they all thought about it. "Shadow-Paws, where did Strombolio last see Sour Apple?" Buckthorn broke the silence. "He's wandering around the grove somewhere. Strombolio tried to grab him, but he got away." Buckthorn remembered how the sea stone pulsed when it sensed a Wendigo's presence. "Our fragments should lead us right to him." "That's right, Buckthorn, you're already learning so much." Son nodded approvingly. "But how will we catch him?" "A good question. The dryad wouldn't be easy to catch. Whatever Wendigo possessed him was smart enough to stay out of sight and far away from anyone that could break its spell over the dryad. Just their luck, the fragments would tip them off before they could even get close to Sour Apple." Jack Thunder remembered. Music. Music weakened Wendigos. If Buckthorn were to start singing around Sour Apple, it would stun him long enough for the others to get the jump on him. "I think I've got it. Buckthorn, when we see him, I want you to sing your song. Then, while he's stunned, me, Shadow-Paws, and Snotter will get the jump on him and get this Wendigo out of his body." Buckthorn nodded. "Sounds like a plan." "It does indeed. But I think we'd all better be getting to bed. You all will need your rest, Frosty reminded them. With that, they all went their separate ways to their bedchambers. They had a big day tomorrow, and none of them could afford to miss it. Jack Thunder and Razor woke up early the next morning. They had no time for festivities. Both of them knew that beyond the happy facade of the grove, something dark and menacing lurked. And today, they and their friends were going to find it. The 5 of them hastily made their way into town. As they wove their way in and out of the foliage, neither Stormbringer nor the Sea Stone nor Lethal Joke showed any changes in their auras. Jack Thunder wiped the sweat from his brow. This was going to be harder than he thought. Shadow-Paws, where were you when Strombolio found you? He asked his companion. Pretty far from here. I was near the Circus of Shadows caravan. Sour Apple might be there. He probably couldn't stand to be around the Heartwood right now, not with the Wendigo in his body. As the team ventured farther from the warmth and safety of the grove, past the line of trailers and into the deep woods, the Anima fragments began to glow faintly. The air became sterile and frigid, and the land gradually lost its color, becoming more depleted with each step. Jack Thunder's hands tightened around his staff. Everything inside of him was primed for battle. Turning to the other 3, he could see they were just as tense. Even Buckthorn seemed impervious to the cold as she followed close behind. Shadow-Paws' ears wouldn't stop twitching. He listened for any signs of the dryad. Snotter was at the back, watching for anything that might spring on them from the dark. Finally, they reached a clearing. It was about midday, but one could mistake it for the middle of the night. The world had gone completely silent. Not even the wind or the crunch of snow beneath their feet could be heard. Holding the frantically pulsing Stormbringer aloft, Jack Thunder scanned the area to see if he could spot Sour Apple in the darkness. "Sweet Apple," a scratchy voice pierced the silence. Jack Thunder frantically glanced around. He couldn't see anything. "You, just leaving me with all the work. What kind of brother are you?" That voice. That was the voice of a person filled with nothing but anger and resentment. It sent a shiver down the storm gremlin's spine. He stepped out into the clearing, aiming Stormbringer's blade straight forward in preparation for an attack. Through the gloom, a scene took shape. One of those wooden trailers, much like the ones in the circus caravan, sat on the edge of the clearing. Beside it were many barrels full of apples. Jack Thunder wouldn't have been able to see any of this had it not been for the small lamp hanging from the side of the trailer, barely illuminating the scene. And making his way around the trailer was the dryad they had all been looking for. He was grabbing and picking at his head branches, not realizing there weren't any more apples on them. His leafy hair was unkempt and falling out, and he had dark circles under his Granny Smith-colored eyes, which now faintly glowed red. Worst of all, though, was his expression, twisted into one of complete bitterness. He had been here, working himself to the bone for days on end. He didn't even notice when Jack Thunder took a step forward. As he got closer, Jack Thunder noticed that Sour Apple's mouth was leaking black fluid. The same fluid he had seen leaking from Terry Paradise's mouth when he was infected. It wasn't until he was right up next to Sour Apple that the dryad noticed his presence. He growled, turning to the Storm Gremlin to scream at him. But when he saw Stormbringer in Jack Thunder's hand, he stopped dead in his tracks. Jack Thunder nearly bolted right then and there, but after a few moments, Sour Apple still didn't move. He tried reasoning with him. "Come on, you don't need to do this anymore. Your brother's worried about you." Sour Apple blinked. His eyes were locked on Stormbringer. Buckthorn, Shadow-Paws, and Snotter stepped out into the clearing. Their anima fragments glowed all the same. At the sight of the four kids, Sour Apple staggered back. You need to... He struggled to get out. I need to what? Jack Thunder asked. A pair of smoldering eyes appeared from Sour Apple's shadow. Jack Thunder watched in horror as the shadow twisted upon itself, morphing into a grotesque new form. When it stopped, it emerged from the ground as a twisted parody of Sour Apple. One with his shape, but a form encased in inky black with sulfur yellow eyes. One that was as tall as the trees surrounding them. It let out a bellowing, roaring laugh. Run.